two, nothing to do, man, it was high. So we jumped in. We were summertime sipping, sipping. Sweet tea kissing off of your lips. T-shirt dripping, dripping wet. How could I forget? Watching that blonde hair sway to every song I'd say. You were California beautiful. I was playing everything but cool like
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Gilchrist Metal Fabricating in southern New Hampshire. Last day of excitement, or one more day of excitement for New Hampshire for a while. And it's an exciting day it is. We've got Governor Christie here with us. Probably the best part of this package is his wife, Mary Pat. What this country needs is a boss. I don't know if we need my kind of boss, his kind of boss. Sorry. I had to do it. Or the cake boss. Come on, Buddy Valastro. Well, that's it for this show. I would like to introduce Sergeant Major Paul Chevalier, who's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. We'll begin this morning's meeting like we should begin all public meetings in the United States by pledging allegiance to the flag, which you see over here. So please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. It's my pleasure now to introduce the New Hampshire Speaker of the House of Representatives, Sean Jasper.
Thank you, Paul. Good morning, Governor, and welcome to my hometown, Hudson. Excellent. It's a pleasure to have you here, and it's a pleasure to have all of you here. You know, no state does retail politics like New Hampshire, and I've met with many of the candidates going back to the summer. And Governor Christie has been in my office up at the State House a couple of times, as have others. And I really didn't make up my mind until last week, because like so many people in New Hampshire, I needed to meet the candidates 3 times too. And so it really came down to getting to know the candidates and getting to know who I thought would be the best person, who had the best ideas to lead this nation. And after a lot of soul searching and knowing that we have some very good candidates running for president on the Republican side, some very good candidates, came down to my belief that there was no question in my mind that Governor Christie is the best man to lead America. And it is now my pleasure to introduce the cake boss, Buddy Valastro. Thank you.
Hello, New Hampshire. Well, thank you. It's an honor and privilege to be here today with the governor, who is not only my governor, but a friend, and a really, really honest and true person. And I'm not a political guy. I don't really get into the political arena, but it's about what Governor Christie's done for New Jersey. I mean, Hurricane Sandy was one of the most traumatic things that ever happened. And the governor did such an amazing job for helping in Sandy relief and helping in just keeping us together as one. And you know what? He did the right thing. We're in a, New Jersey is mostly Democratic, for those of you who don't know, just in case you don't know, but Governor Christie knows how to work with both sides to get things done. We can't draw a line in the sand about being Republican or Democrats. We're Americans. And when you have situations like 9/11, when you have situations like Sandy, there's no party lines. And you need somebody who's going to cut through the bull crap, right? And who's going to bring people together to make compromises. And that's what we need right now. I believe in Governor Christie because he's a man of his word. He's done amazing things for New Jersey. And I honestly believe he would make an awesome president. where we could be proud as Americans in the world. You know, I travel the world a lot. Probably what you don't know about Cake Boss is that Cake Boss is viewed in 220 countries all over the world. It's dubbed in 45 languages and seen by 1.5 billion people worldwide. And I've been from Abu Dhabi to Australia to Brazil to Slovakia. I mean, I've been all over the world. And we need to make America when something's American made and it's, you know, the pride that we have as Americans, we're losing that luster in the world about being world leaders. And we need somebody who's going to take us there. And it's by believing in ourselves, bringing the parties together to actually get things done. And nobody's going to do a better job here than my friend, my governor, the best guy for the job, Governor Christie. And I want to introduce the great governor of Maryland, Governor Hogan, to come up here and say a few words. Thank you.
How about the Cake Boss? You can tell I like to eat cake. I'm a big fan of the Cake Boss, even more after hearing him talk this morning. Thank you for being here, buddy. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here this morning. You've got an awesome responsibility. You know, I know that the people of New Hampshire take their votes seriously, more so than anybody else in the country. And I think you have the ability to help decide who we're going to nominate as our nominee for this race in November. And I want you to think about two things. I don't want you to think about who the media wants to tell you who's going to be the next candidate or who's going to be the next president. I want you to decide, right? We kept hearing that it's down to 3 people. We hear a little stuff about polls. Let me tell you something. I'm a guy who a couple days before the election in Maryland, the bluest state in the country, they said I was going to lose by 18 points. I'm actually the governor of Maryland, believe it or not. So the only poll that counts is the one they're going to count tomorrow night. And I happen to believe that the people in this room and the people across this state are smart enough. You don't want to have the media tell you who to vote for. You don't want to have some pollster tell you who to vote for. You want to look somebody in the eye. You want them to come here and meet you face to face and answer your questions. This guy has been in this state for more than 70 days. He's done more than 100 events. He's answered every single question. There's a lot of things I love about Governor Christie. The thing I like most, he tells it like it is. He answers the questions. Some of these guys, I've been watching them in the debates, they're nice guys. I know most of them. I'm not sure where they stand on some of the issues. They say this, they say that, typical political speak. This guy doesn't talk that way. He tells it like it is. Whether you agree or disagree, you know exactly where he stands. He's honest, he's direct, and he's the kind of person that we need in the White House. Now, 2 things I want you to think about. Next fall, who do you want on that stage debating Hillary Clinton? Anybody here want to see Hillary Clinton as president? Who do you think is the one we ought to put on that stage? Do you see anybody see the debate the other night? How about our guy, huh? Wait till you see what he's going to do this fall going against Hillary Clinton. Second question is, think about who you really want sitting in that Oval Office. Now, I can tell you as a governor in a deep blue state like Governor Christie, it's a tough job. Every day he makes tough decisions. It's a little different than being a freshman senator, with all due respect. He's made the tough decisions. He's tested. He's ready. He's prepared to be president. He's got the leadership skills that we need. I want you all to join me in a big New Hampshire welcome for the next president of the United States, Governor Christie.
All right, thank you. Good morning. Thank you all. To Jack Gilchrist and all the folks here, thank you for hosting us this morning. Appreciate it very much. To Sergeant Major Chevalier, thank you as always for your presence and for reminding us not only by your conduct but by your words how important it is every day for us to feel really proud that we're Americans and that that flag represents what our country is all about. Thank you, Paul. being here this morning. I want to thank the speaker. Everybody, I'm telling you, every candidate in this race wanted the speaker's endorsement. They all came to Concord. They all came to meet with him. I did too. And one of the things that I admired the most about him was he said to me very early on, I want to give every candidate a fair shake to speak to my caucus. I want to give every candidate a fair shake to persuade whatever members of my caucus they can persuade to their cause. And so I don't want to get involved in this until after everyone's had a chance to speak to my people. That's leadership. That's bringing people together, to give everybody an opportunity to compete for the support of not just him, but of every Republican in the Republican House caucus. And I respected that attitude and that approach by Sean. And then once all that had happened, he's also not someone who's going to sit on the sidelines. He's going to let people know who he's going to pull the lever for tomorrow night. A man, am I proud he's going to pull the lever for me. You're doing a great job as speaker here, and I'm proud to have you on my team, Sean. Thank you very much. The cake boss is in New Hampshire. Buddy Valastro and his whole family have been wonderful friends to me and to Mary Pat. We first met at my inauguration in 2010 when Buddy made the cake for my inauguration. And Mary Pat and I have actually been on the Cake Boss show. It was many years ago. It's now almost 6 years ago. But we were on, he came, it is 6 years ago now, he came to our inaugural at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey, and presented the most amazing cake I've ever seen in my life. And here's the thing about his cakes. You know, they look amazing. Everybody knows that. They taste even better. I mean, they're really good. You know, sometimes you see these like kind of crazy looking cakes and then you taste them and you're like, oh God, they're awful. Now, Buddy's cakes are amazing. And not only that, but he's the kind of story that I want to highlight in America as president. A guy who took a bakery in Hoboken, started by his dad, and has turned it into a worldwide enterprise through the greatness of his ideas and the depth of his work ethic. Nobody I know in their own business works harder than Buddy Valastro. And this is not some miracle that he's all around the world and has bakeries everywhere around not only our country, but around the world. It's because he had a great idea and he was willing to work hard. That's what America's supposed to be about. That anybody from anywhere, no matter your background, no matter your experience, if you have great ideas and you are willing to work hard, that America can make you get the opportunity to have great success. And so he's not only up here because he's my friend and I'm his, and I'm thrilled to have his support, and he doesn't get into politics much, and so I'm because Republicans and Democrats watch the Cake Boss, and they got to continue to, and independents, he wants everybody, he even wants socialists to watch the Cake Boss. I'm sure Bernie watches the Cake Boss too, and no doubt about it. We want them all to continue to watch the show and buy the food, but I want to have him here today for New Hampshire to see an example of what kind of Americans I want to see rewarded. The ones who work hard, the ones who play by the rules, the ones who have a dream and are willing to fight to make it come true, and that this is still the greatest country in the world for that to happen. And so I'm thrilled he's up here, and I cannot thank him enough, he and Lisa and the whole family, for being our friends. Thanks for being here, buddy. And lastly, my buddy, Governor Larry Hogan. He was right. Everybody was telling me and telling him he was going to lose in Maryland, that Maryland had elected one Republican governor in the last 50 years, and that there was no chance that a guy like Larry Hogan or any Republican was going to get elected in Maryland. There were a few people, a number of whom are here with us today from Maryland, and me and Larry, who didn't believe that was true. I still believe that any candidate who gets out there and fights hard, has a great message, great experience, and a vision for his state can be elected, no matter whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. And man, he is living proof of it, as is Charlie Baker in Massachusetts and Bruce Rauner in Illinois, places that Republicans aren't supposed to win, but we did because we had better candidates and better ideas and we worked harder. And there's nobody who worked harder to be elected, the governor of Maryland, than Larry Hogan. He has been up here with me for a number of days. He was up here before with me. There's nobody who's working harder for me to become president of the United States other than Mary Pat. And that's Governor Larry Hogan of Maryland. He is my friend, and I'm thrilled to have him here. Thank you, Gov. All right. So, 34 hours. Not that I'm counting. 34 hours till the polls close here. And what we know is that no one knows what's going to happen in this race. Nobody. It is completely up in the air, and all of you, the voters in New Hampshire, are going to decide it. And there's lots of history here in New Hampshire about all of you fooling everybody in terms of who you ultimately decided to pick. I think you guys are the greatest shoppers in America, right? I mean, there's still people shopping. It's 34 hours to go. If you do this in every other part of your life, I can only imagine what the stores look like on Christmas Eve in New Hampshire. People jammed in the stores on Christmas Eve, saying, okay, it's finally time to decide what to buy our loved ones for Christmas, because I had to think about it a long time. But I admire that. And I'm glad, by the way, you waited till after Saturday night to decide, so many of you, because here's why that debate was so important. You got to be ready to be president of the United States. President of the United States is not about having on a nice suit and a good smile and reading the teleprompter well. Being president of the United States is not about that. We've had that for the last 7 years. Barack Obama wears a nice suit, he's got a big smile, and he reads the teleprompter well. But he never managed a thing in his life. Jack Gilchrist wouldn't hire him here to manage a shift, let alone to be president of the United States. Fact is that you need to have some experience in doing this. Because it's nothing like the United States Senate. The United States Senate, they tell you when to show up and where to sit and what to do, and they give you the list of questions beforehand and you vote yes or no on them. That's not the way it is being governor or being president. The crises come in when you least expect it. No one calls you at 4 o'clock in the morning to tell you your bill that you thought was going to be posted in the subcommittee today is not going to be posted until next week. That's not the kind of emergency that makes people call you at 4 o'clock in the morning. But man, when a police officer is shot and killed, the governor gets called at 4 o'clock in the morning. When an ice storm is coming in and people won't be able to drive safely around your state, the governor gets called. When the budget needs to be balanced, it's the governor who has to sit there and make sure it gets done, because we have a constitutional amendment to make sure budgets need to be balanced, which they should have in Washington, D.C., by the way. And when the second worst natural disaster in American history hits your state, it's the governor that the people look to rebuild that state. And that's what I did in New Jersey for the last 3.5 years, is to rebuild from a storm that destroyed 365,000 homes in 24 hours. And so people's lives, their businesses were ruined. And when you're sitting there as governor, no one gives you an instruction manual on how to do that. You just have to dive in, roll up your sleeves, and do it and lead. We don't know what kind of crisis is going to confront the next president of the United States, but here's one thing we know for sure. There will be a number of them. A number of challenges, a number of crises, and you need to ask yourself between now and tomorrow night, who's the person who's most mature, most tested, best prepared to confront those crises when they come? And I think you saw on Saturday night that when the lights get really bright, and they were really bright Saturday night, 13.5 million people watching on television, a big crowd in that assembly room in St. Anselm's, and the media of the United States all watching. When the lights get that bright, you either shine or you melt. We cannot afford to have a president who melts. At the key moments, we can't afford to have a president who can't stand up and not going to be counted. We need one who will stand up and be counted, because he's been tested before. I've been tested. Not only by a Democratic legislature, which I've had every minute of every day of my governorship. And believe me, they don't wake up every morning asking, geez, how can we make the governor happy today? I've been tested by the most aggressive liberal media in America, the combination of the New York and Philadelphia media. It's no picnic, especially when you're a conservative Republican, but you stand up to the test. Whether it's from the New York Times or the Philadelphia Inquirer or whether it's from the Democratic legislatures, you stand up and you take the heat. We have candidates in this race who, when things get really hot, they run. When it gets really hot, I run into the heat. I like the heat. I like the challenge. That's why I was a Republican and ran for governor of New Jersey. Because if you don't like the heat, you got no business being in New Jersey. So we got a lot of work to do as a country, challenges and opportunities. And we got to get to work. And you're all going to start it tomorrow night. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow night. I'm looking forward to actual people actually voting rather than polls and pundits and all the talking. But here's the last bit of good news, and I'll be ready to take your questions. Here's the last bit of good news for the people of New Hampshire. After tomorrow night, we're leaving you. Right? That deserves a round of applause. We're leaving. And, well, I will be back in August because New Hampshire's going to be a swing state. And I'll be back in August as the nominee because one of my biggest and highest priorities is making sure that Kelly Ayotte gets reelected to the United States Senate. But come tomorrow night, no more TV commercials that you have to, like, skip through or go to the refrigerator while they're going on, and they go on and on and on. No more mail in your mailbox. I am sure we have disabled a number of letter carriers throughout New Hampshire who have been carrying all that mail on their backs all around New Hampshire. No more bothering you at your diners and at your restaurants. You can actually eat your dinner uninterrupted by one of us coming in to shake your hand. All of that's going to be over tomorrow night, but you got a lot of work to do between now and then. One last person that I haven't spoken about before I answer your questions. Mary Pat and I came here starting in April to get to know the people of New Hampshire. I've now spent 71 days here in New Hampshire. She is now on her 53rd day today in New Hampshire. She has been here more than any other candidate but me. She has worked incredibly hard here. And when we came the first time, we stayed at a hotel in Manchester, and we came downstairs in the morning to start our day, and Mary Pat went off to get a cup of coffee. And the manager of the hotel came over to me, and he said, Governor, just wanted to introduce myself. Hope you're going to be here a lot. Thank you for picking our hotel, and I hope we get to see you. And I said, absolutely. Shook my hand, and he walked away. But then he came right back. And he said, by the way, I want to tell you one other thing. I said, sure. He goes, I think you can tell a lot about a man by what he does more than what he says. I said, okay, sure. And he said, and I watched you this morning. He said, you could have walked right to your car and sat in your car, but instead you stayed here and you waited for your young aide to get her coffee, and then you walked to the car with her. It's a true story. And knowing how rumors get started in presidential campaigns, I said, the woman who I came down in the elevator with this morning from my hotel room was not my young aide. It's my wife. Now, I told her that whenever we do these town hall meetings, if she's with me, I'm going to tell that story. She particularly likes it because she is referred to as the young aide. I don't know whether I think that's more of a testimony on her than anything else, but we're a team on this, and we've worked extraordinarily hard together. But she told me that if I told the young aide story, she would do one thing for me that a young aide, if they were here, would actually do when it's time for me to get to work. And that is, I take my jacket off, like most of you do, when you go to work every day. And so I'm taking mine off, and she said she would hold it for me. So we still have a deal? All right, let's do it. All right. Simple. Raise your hand. I'll answer your questions. Who's got a question? Yes, ma'am. Right back there. They're going to give you a microphone so everybody can hear you.
Bush, and I'm hoping to ask Mr. Trump as well. I'm a very old flight attendant, and United Airlines, Flight 175 was my trip, and I flew it 24 hours prior to September 11th, and they were my friends. Good girls, sweet girls, very young. A young girl and her boyfriend had just gotten engaged on the last trip. We all celebrated on the layover. And they were young. They were all young. And there was a lot of survival guilt because I could have been their mother. And I wasn't afraid to fly. I was so angry. I was so angry and so sad. And that combination it just did me in. I had a horrible time flying. And I had to quit. And I loved flying. I mean, I started in the 70s, and it was fun then. You could take cookies from the little lady that made them, or someone that picked their apples off their tree and brought them for the girls. And of course, everything changed. It did a 180. And I guess I just want to know that my family and people I love, everyone in this room and across the country, I just want to know that we're going to be safe. How are you going to keep us safe?
First off, it's an extraordinary thing to be that close to death and have it not come. And so that feeling that you have, I've heard from many folks because of where I'm from. There's lots of people, as you know, in our state that dodged death that day.
Yeah.
Lots we lost. We lost over 700 people in New Jersey that day, more than any other state other than the state of New York. And I know, and Mary Pat and I both are friends with, lots of the widows and widowers and children who lost their families. And so this is not something that I read about in a book.
Yeah.
This is something that I feel still every day because of who I am, where I was on September 11th, and what my job is now, which is to lead those people. Also, I was named U.S. Attorney for New Jersey on the day before 9/11. September 10th, 2001, President Bush named me U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, and the next day, the entire job changed.
Yeah.
Changed.
Yeah.
So how are you going to feel safe? Here's how. I'm the only person on that stage who has fought terrorism. The only one. Because you can imagine that if you're the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey, where one of those flights took off from, that your job, your number one job when you became the chief federal prosecutor, was to make sure it never happened again. And President Bush and Attorney General Ashcroft made that very clear to all of us, that it was no longer acceptable to catch these folks after it happened. There would be too much death and too much destruction. We had to catch them before. And we failed on September 11th to do that. Those who were in charge at that time failed to do it. So they set a very clear course for us. And over the next 7 years, I brought two of the largest terrorism cases after September 11th in New Jersey. One gentleman who was trying to sell shoulder-fired missiles to a Yemeni terrorist group. Another group of 6 men from South Jersey who were planning to attack Fort Dix. We caught them before they acted. We arrested them, we tried them, we convicted them, and they're all in jail. Those are the things that we need to do to keep our country safe at home. We need, once again, a commander-in-chief who understands how to do this. It isn't reading about it in a book. It isn't getting it just from briefings, but has actually done it, has been on the ground and fought these fights. We can't hold back in terms of the resources that we have. There's something you want to say, so go ahead and say it. Well, I'll get to that, okay? The first thing you need to do is to raise your defenses here at home. And so we need to increase our intelligence capability, increase our law enforcement capability, and give them all the tools they need. You know, this summer, Senator Paul, Senator Cruz, and the President took away tools from the National Security Agency to monitor and collect data to try to figure out who's trying to come in, how to stop them. It was the wrong thing to do. When I'm president, we'll restore that. We will restore that capability because I trust the men and women in our intelligence community to act within the law. If somebody breaks the law, we'll prosecute them. But you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I said right from the beginning that we cannot have Syrian refugees coming into this country when the FBI director says that he cannot tell us that he can vet them and ensure that they're safe. Well, that's the end of the discussion then. Because while I care about the Syrian people and what they're going through, and I do, and so do most Americans, my first job is I'm President of the United States of America. And my job is to protect Americans first. First, if we can do that, If we can do that while helping other people around the world, I'm all for it. But my first job is to protect you, your family, and the families of everybody in this room and who you represent. We also need to go overseas with allies and go after ISIS. We need to do that. We can't just sit back here and play defense. We have to play offense too. And we need to get our European allies and our Arab allies with us. We cannot do this alone. It is bad for America and it is bad for the world if we do this by ourselves. ISIS needs to know that it's not just America that wants to destroy them, but it's the rest of the civilized world that wants to destroy them. And so we need to have that help, not just militarily, but also psychologically. Here in our country, we also need to know that we're going to support our law enforcement officers. They are often the first line of defense, even against a terrorist attack. They see things, they suspect things, they have to act. If we don't show confidence in them, which this president has not done, he has made, and the FBI director said this too, there's a chill wind blowing through law enforcement. Law enforcement is afraid to get out of their cars because they're afraid they're not going to be supported by the politicians in this country. I did law enforcement for 7 years. I worked with police officers, I worked with agents all across the country. And what I learned is they have one of the toughest jobs in America. And if there's a bad cop, we prosecute the bad cop. Nobody, whether you wear a badge or not, is allowed to violate the law. But 99.9% of our police officers every day, men and women, are doing selfless things, and they need to be supported. They need to be supported by our political leaders. And I will do that as president. But in the end, what you need to know is that this is personal. This is personal to me. The reason I'm the best prepared one to sit in that chair is because I've experienced it and I've lived it. I watched my wife go into New York City on September 11th. And when you've had that experience and you're lucky enough to have her come home alive, and my younger brother also, then you don't ever take that for granted. So you need to fight every day and understand every morning when you wake up as president, your number one job is to protect the safety and the security of the American people. And so I want to thank you for continuing to remind people in a very personal way about how important this is. Yeah. Yeah. She said, for those of you who hadn't heard, she's afraid the country's forgotten. When I talk about this, I normally mention these two folks, and I wasn't going to this morning, but I will, since you brought it up. Mary Pat and I had a very, good friend who in our parish, in our home, who worked in New York. Mary Pat would often commute with him. He worked on the 44th floor of the World Trade Center, Tower number 2, and he was killed that day in the World Trade Center Tower. The gym in our parish is now named after him. We know his wife, we know his family. We also, our oldest son's best friend, his father worked for Cantor Fitzgerald on the 105th floor of the first tower. And as we know, no one from Cantor Fitzgerald who was there that day got out alive. Neither did his father. And for the last 14 years now, I've watched this young man come to our home and grow up from 8 years old now to 22 without a dad, with his mom raising him and his siblings on her own, without a partner in life anymore. And every day, or rather every birthday for his father, he posts a picture on his Facebook page of his dad, a great picture of his dad in a tuxedo at a wedding, looking like he's having a great time, a big smile on his face. And he just puts one line underneath the picture. He says, "Dad will never forget you." And what I fear is what you fear, that this country's forgetting those folks. They're forgetting Frank, who our gym is named after. They're forgetting this young man's father, who he has gone 14 years without. I will never forget these people because I live among them. I've seen the stories. This is not something I read in the newspaper. Every time this young man walks into our house, we are reminded of two things: our sadness for him and his loss, and how lucky we are not to have experienced the same thing. You want a president in that chair who understands that, and I will be that president if you give me the chance.
I'm an Air Force veteran. I'm just reading this book called Grounded, A Reason for Abolishing the Air Force, written by a professor from a college in Kentucky. He claims that since the Air Force became an independent branch of service almost 70 years ago, it's bought extensive weapon systems never used in combat. Do you favor in some grounding the Air Force or downsizing it if you become president?
No, I don't, not the least. In fact, I feel the exact opposite. I think this president has degraded the Air Force in a way that both affects our pilots and affects our ability to be most effective in combat. We are dealing with incredibly old equipment in the Air Force, incredibly old. We're putting new technology into old frames. And the fact is, this is going to start to affect our ability to be able to conduct air warfare the way we need to. Our pilots are superior to any other pilots in the world, and that's why we're still ahead of the game. But we're continuing to put them behind the 8 ball. That's why I've said, you go on my website, go to chrischristie.com tonight if you're still thinking about these issues, and I lay out a speech I gave in Portsmouth on rebuilding the military at the Naval Yard, and all specifics about what I would do. No fewer than 2,600 coded aircraft ready to go for the United States Air Force. And we need to modernize not just the technology, but the actual hardware equipment of the planes we're flying. We're still flying B-52s. You know, they're a great airplane, but they're way older than the pilots. I mean, double the age of the pilots in some respects, right? And so we need to modernize that. And you know, when we don't modernize our military, and right now, we have the smallest active duty Army we've had since 1940, the smallest active duty Navy we've had since World War I, and the rest of the world knows that too. And the other thing that it does, as I'm sure you're aware, is it requires our fighting men and women to have more frequent deployments and have those deployments be longer. And that's not good for their physical health, and it is definitely not good for their mental health. And we have a lot of veterans coming back here who are committing suicide. And we're responsible. We're responsible. And so we need to do better. We need to put them in a better position in lots of ways, not only in the treatment that they get back when they come home, but also in how long they're away from home and how frequently they're away from home. So that's not fair to them, and it's not fair to their families, and that's why we have to expand in that way. So I am absolutely, I've never read the book, but from the way you're characterizing it, it sounds like I'm 180 degrees opposite from where that guy is. It's available on Amazon? When I get some free time, I'll pick it up. All right. Yes, ma'am.
I haven't decided yet.
All right.
I know.
One of those shoppers.
And I really like
All right, you haven't decided yet. Here we go.
And I really like
second.
you. And this is the
Yeah.
hating point.
What do I need to do?
Explain your Social Security.
You want me to explain the Social Security
I'm
plan?
53 years old, and I'm very nervous about retiring.
Okay.
My husband works his ass off.
Yep.
And I can't, and we paid into it.
Yeah.
And I'm really afraid of it going away and becoming an entitlement.
I'm going to explain it to you. All right?
Please, please
And watch
convince
this.
me.
And watch this.
Honest to God,
and
I want to vote for you, and this is the hating point.
I was going to get up, but I think I'll stay on one knee. All right, here's the thing. Let me tell you about Social Security. Social Security, if we do nothing different, will be insolvent in 7 to 8 years. If we do what we're doing now, that's where it'll be. I'm the only person in this race that's put forward a plan to fix it. Everyone else is ignoring it. You know, they asked Trump, a few weeks ago what he was going to do, and he said, well, we're not going to worry about it because everyone's going to get so amazingly rich and wealthy when I'm president. This is an answer on the debate stage, everybody, by a candidate for president of the United States. Now, I'd love for you and I both to be amazingly rich and wealthy. You're not, I'm not, but it's not going to happen, right? We both know that. So how do we fix it? Here's how we fix it. First, we need to raise the retirement age. Here's why. We're all living longer. You and I are now, your average life expectancy now is 83. Mine is supposed to be 79. Hopefully I get there. We'll be right around that age. These programs were built for when people died in their mid-60s. So what I say is let's raise the retirement age 2 years, but let's phase it in over 25 years. So let's talk about specifically what it would mean for you and I, since we're the same age. Let's say we put this into effect next year, we're both 54. Currently, the retirement age is 67. So that's 13 years from now, we would be eligible. If my plan went into effect, we would be eligible not 13 years from now, but 14 years from now, because we go up 1 month a year. So we could probably gut it out for another year, both of us. So that's not that big a deal, and Hillary Clinton will tell you, by the way, that that's throwing grandma off the cliff. But just remember that it takes Grandma 25 years to hit the ground once we threw her off the cliff, so that's a pretty high cliff, right? So it's all right. Second is means testing. Means testing of Social Security is this. Here's the problem. The thing you're afraid of has happened. The money you and I have both put in every 2 weeks out of our paycheck, and your husband and my wife has put in, they stole it. They've been spending it since the mid-1960s on other stuff. You know what's in the trust fund? Treasury notes, IOUs. And as a result, we have a checkbook imbalance problem. So how do we fix the checkbook imbalance problem? There's only two ways, right? More money in, less money out. I'm a less money out guy, and here's how I would do it. If you make $200,000 or more in retirement income, not assets, income, so that means you got about $4 to $5 million in the bank to throw off $200,000 a year, you don't get Social Security. Now, you got to be pretty well off, but there are a number of people in this country who are well off. And what I ask them is, do you need a $1,200 Social Security check a month if you're making $200,000 a year in retirement? I don't think so. And what that will do is save the program for folks like you. Because you're not, I presume, going to make $200,000 a year in retirement, given the way you're talking. If you're nervous.
Well, I'm like $200,000 in the 401k.
Right, no, I'm talking about income every year, income, like a paycheck, either from a pension or from interest and dividends and capital gains from your investments. So it means you have to have about $4 to $5 million put away to throw that off. You got the $4 to $5 million? No, a little short. All right. So since that's the case, it's not going to affect you, but it will affect others. But I think you have to ask people who have done extraordinarily well in our country to make this sacrifice since the government stuck it to us by stealing the money. We cannot allow you or others in this audience who have paid in and played by the rules to grow old in poverty. That's what Social Security was supposed to prevent. And so to save it, we've got to take those. I remember when I was first devising this plan, I was talking to Mark Zuckerberg, who's a friend of ours and is the founder of Facebook, as you know. And Mark said to me, so let me ask you a question. Governor, what's entitlement reform going to mean to me? I said, it means you get nothing. Absolutely nothing, Mark. You're going to pay in for the rest of your life. You're 31 years old. You're paying for the rest of your life. And if my plan goes into effect at the end when you retire, you'll get nothing. You know why? Because you don't need it. And for people who've done very well here, I know the argument. The argument is, well, they paid in too. I know it's not fair, but life isn't fair. And the government stealing this money wasn't fair. But the only alternative is to raise your taxes now. And I don't want to take more money out of your pocket now, right? And by the way, here's the other thing. Let's use an analogy here. Let's say that, what town do you live in?
Hudson.
Oh, you live in Hudson, okay. So let's say they open up a new bank in Hudson, and you go and you deposit the money in this local bank in Hudson. And a year from now, that bank goes belly up, and you lose some of your money. Then 6 months later, you get a knock on your front door. There's a guy at the front door, and he says, hey, how you doing? I'm opening up a new bank here in Hudson. Love to have some of your deposits. And you go, hey, wait a second. Aren't you the guy who opened up that bank 18 months ago, and it went belly up, and I lost some of my money? And he goes, oh, yeah, but I learned my lesson. Now, looking at you, I'm thinking, there's no way he's leaving your front porch with any of your money, right? Right, okay. Well, then why would we give it to the government? Hillary Clinton wants to raise taxes. She says, I'll fix it by you giving me more money, and I'll take it from the rich people. That's fine, but why would we want to give her any more money when they've already stolen the money we gave them before? That's stupid. And nobody here is stupid. So that's what we have to do on Social Security. And here's the thing, if we don't do it, beware of the people who say we're going to fix it some other way. It's either less money out or more money in. That's it. When the checkbook doesn't balance, there's no other magic, man. We can't buy a Powerball ticket to get our way out of this, okay? It's not going to help. And that's what we have to do. Now, no one else is talking about this. You can go on anybody else's website in this race, and every time entitlements are asked in this campaign on the debate stage, I'm the only one who's asked. You know why? Because I'm the only one with a plan. They asked Senator Rubio the other night about his plan. You know what he said? He gave a 90-second answer on tax reform. Then Senator Cruz responded with a 60-second answer on his tax reform plan. Then Senator Rubio came back and gave 30 seconds on why Cruz's tax reform plan isn't good. And then I finally interrupted and said, excuse me, can I interrupt this debate on the floor of the United States Senate to actually answer the question that was asked about entitlements? They don't want, here's the thing about the other candidates. They don't want to talk to you about this because they're afraid of you. I'm talking to you about it because I trust you. I trust that you know it's a problem. You already told me you were scared about it. So that means you know it's a problem. So we have to fix it. That's what we need to get back to in this country, a mentality of problems ignored do not go away. Problems faced can be fixed. We will face the problem of Social Security together, and we will fix it together. That's the way we'll do it. Thanks. Yes, sir. I'll get there. Right behind you. He's got a microphone for you.
Okay, thanks. We all know how President Obama has usurped his authority with executive privilege. The question I have for you is, how will you use that privilege if you're president?
I use it the same way I've used it in New Jersey, which is very simply what the lawyers will tell you, and they're right, is this. There's only two ways to use executive orders. Either if the authority has been directly given to you by Congress to regulate that area by statute, or if the Congress is silent on it, then the executive can come in and do something. What you can't do is what he's doing, which is Congress has legislated on immigration, so the only way you can change that law is to get Congress to change it. He's doing executive orders. He's ignoring the marijuana laws and allowing states to have recreational marijuana. He's ignoring the immigration laws by letting sanctuary cities exist across the country. He signs executive orders on issues that have already been litigated. That's why he's losing in court every time, because it's illegal to do it. So here's what I would do. First thing I would do as president is to revoke all of his executive orders. Just revoke them and start from scratch, right? I think not only is that the right thing to do from a legal perspective, but here's the other thing. I think it sends a powerful signal to Congress that you're ready to work with them. And we need to send that signal. Listen, they were elected too. You know, I get to be president of the United States. I'm not emperor. I'm president, right? You remember George Washington was very, very, very upset when John Adams tried to give the presidency a different kind of name. His Excellency, His Majesty. George Washington looked at John Adams, his vice president, and said, "It's Mr. President, nothing more, nothing less." George Washington was very wise in lots of ways, and he set the tone as the first president that you're not an emperor or king. And Washington could have been, right? He was the most popular figure in America. If George Washington said he wanted to be King George, he would have been King George. He didn't want to be. I don't want to be King Chris, either as King of America or and even prom king. That's what I'm running for either, right? I'm not running for either of those things. I'm running for president of the United States. I'm willing to work with the Congress, and I think revoking all those executive orders and sitting down with the leaders of both parties and saying, listen, it has been a very rocky last 8 years in relationships between the president and the Congress, even 12 years if you go back to the last 4 years of the Bush administration. We need to start anew. And I'm going to spend the time that's necessary with Republicans and Democrats to do that. The last thing is this, you know, it was amazing to me, just a little symbolic thing that's really important. I read 4 months ago that John Boehner went on Air Force One for the first time. Now, he's been the Republican leader of the Congress for every year until this one of Barack Obama's presidency. He was never on Air Force One. I mean, I want to tell all of you something. You make me president, Nancy Pelosi's still the Democratic leader, she can come on Air Force One whenever she wants. She wants to ride somewhere, she comes. That's it. She wants to steal the M&Ms, I'll let her do that too. I don't really care. Because here's why. Every time she gets on there, she spends 15 or 20 minutes talking to me, she's going to realize I'm a good person. And I'm going to realize, even when I disagree with her, that she's a good person. And that we're both there trying to help our country. And I'm not the only one with principles. They got elected too, and they have principles. Open your ears, put the pen down for a minute, and try to make something happen in a way that we used to, which is human beings talking and listening to each other. Executive orders, when they're misused, abuse that ability to do that, and they send an awful signal to everybody else. That's the way I'd handle it as president. It's the way I've handled it as governor.
Great job on the debate Saturday night, Governor.
Thank you, babe. I had a good time, didn't I?
Yes, you did. What I'd like to ask you is, you're talking about increasing the age of Social Security recipients to
Yes, sir.
67 and all the way up. I'm 73 years old. I'm still paying taxes. You know, I'm working to make ends meet. I'm still paying taxes so that these government employees can retire at 55 and 60 years old. When is somebody going to change their retirement system or bring it into the Social Security system?
Well, let me tell you this. The federal government no longer, if you're employed, I think it's after 1985, if your employment began after 1985, you no longer get a federal pension unless you're military. And I think we all understand that we made a deal with our fighting men and women that they're going to get a pension. I think they deserve one, and I wouldn't change that, and I assume you do too. But there's a myth now about pensions at the federal level. Now, in states, it's still a problem. And every one of our states, mine included, has a huge problem with pensions. And listen, my view is we should end it. And I've proposed that in New Jersey, but with a Democratic legislature, I'm not getting very far on that one. But at the federal level, just so you know, if you were employed, because I was a federal employee for 7 years, from 2002 to end of 2008, and what I got was a 401k. So I got to put money out of my paycheck pre-tax every 2 weeks. The government would match a small percentage of that. I don't remember what the percentage was, but it was relatively small. And then when I left as U.S. Attorney, I took the money with me. And now it's deposited in another account. And as governor, by the way, I don't get a pension in New Jersey. So the federal government, Ronald Reagan did it in 1985, ending the federal pension system. So they don't get pensions anymore unless you're in Congress. Right? So what I say is what we really got to focus on, and not that it's a huge money item, but it is a big symbolic item, because you're 73 years old, you're still working, you're still making ends meet for your family and yourself. There's no reason that somebody who serves in Congress should have a lifetime pension. Just isn't. You shouldn't have it. Their service to the country is no more extraordinary than any other federal worker. And those federal workers don't get pensions anymore. You know what? You're a member of Congress. Do what I did as U.S. Attorney. Take money out, put it in a 401k. We'll match it a certain percentage. You take the money with you when you leave. Because the other thing this encourages is for them to stay forever. And I'm for term limits, too. No more than 12 years in Congress for anybody. It's crazy. Look, listen, I hope she votes for me, man. I got all dirt all over my pants and everything now. I hope I got your vote, man. I got to... All right, good. Hey. There you go. It's worth the dirty pants. We're going. It's good. So those are the things we need to do, but I don't want you to misunderstand. Federal employees anymore are off the pension system. They're just doing 401k stuff. But let's get Congress off that pension system too, because it is not right for them to serve for a certain number of years and get a lifetime salary. It's not right. Does it cost us a lot of money in the scheme of a multi-trillion-dollar budget? No, but it matters. It matters because I'm asking for sacrifice from others. I'm saying we got to raise Social Security age. We got to take Social Security away from people who have been very successful. Why the heck should Congress continue to get a pension? So I think that's really important. As president, I would push both for the end of their pensions and for term limits for members of Congress. They need to step up to the plate too and contribute to what's going on in this country. They're not indispensable. The President of the United States has an 8-year term limit. The Governor of New Jersey, I have an 8-year term limit. If I'm dispensable, I can tell you the truth. There's nobody in my legislature that's indispensable. I can guarantee you that. And I got a guy there now who's starting his 44th year in the legislature. Seriously. What that, Sean? 44 years, man. I said to that guy for 44 years, like, go home, man. If you haven't figured it out in 44 years, he got elected when he was 25, and he's never left the legislature. He's 69 now. Think about that. It's crazy. Go home. That's what we need. And I agree with you on the pension stuff, and we need to end it for Congress as well. Yes, sir, right there.
How are you? Good. Hey, thank you, Governor. Hey, I have a small business question. And, there's a lot of talk about raising the minimum wage to 10, 12, 15 bucks. And, those guys, they don't own a small business. And a lot of small businesses are struggling. And up front, will you give a commitment to fight any increases in the minimum wage?
Not only will I give you a commitment, I've already done it. I vetoed a minimum wage increase in my own state because it was too aggressive, too quick, and was not fair. They wanted to raise it $1.50 an hour immediately in one fell swoop. And I said to the folks in the legislature, if we want to raise the minimum wage, we can raise it, but incrementally, slowly over time, so you as a small business owner can adjust. So I said they wanted a $1.50 increase in 1 year. I said, no, how about 50 cents a year for 3 years? They rejected that. And so we're in this big fight. New Jersey, the Speaker of our Assembly just proposed taking our minimum wage from $8 and change to $15. And what's going to happen if that happens. People are going to lose their jobs.
But the federal minimum wage is only,
Seven and change. Yeah.
okay, so I mean, that's what it should be, right?
Yeah, I am not favoring an increase in the minimum wage, especially when you're looking at 0.7% economic growth last quarter. Small businesses are suffering, and we got to get regulation off small businesses back. And one of the regulations is increasing the minimum wage because it's a hidden tax on you, because not only do you have to pay the increased wage, you got to pay the increased payroll taxes that go along with it too.
Yeah. How many businesses went out of business in New Jersey when they did that to them?
Well, we still are calculating it. The fact of the matter is that it hasn't gone up that much yet. It went up to $1.50 initially. And what I think we're going to see is, for all kinds of small businesses, everything from what kind of small business do you have?
Sales and marketing.
Okay. From a business like yours to a fast food place, what you're going to find is that people, and I had a small business guy who said to me at a town hall meeting 2 or 3 days ago, he said, listen, if they do this, he said, and he's got 5 employees. He said, I'm going to look at the 5 of them, and I'm going to say, you 2 are gone, and you 3 stay.
Yeah.
I'll pay you 3 the increased wage, but you 2, I'm sorry, you're fired. And because I can't afford it. It doesn't make any sense. It's bad economic policy, and it's pandering. Because let me tell you what politicians do better than anything in the world.
Yeah.
They spend other people's money better than anything in the world. I ain't looking to spend any more of your money than you're already spending. I want you to spend it, and yeah, you have a commitment for me. I'm not going to do it. And I didn't do it in New Jersey.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, sir. Here you go.
Thank you, Governor. All of us have seen dramatic changes in healthcare. If you look around the state of New Hampshire, you can barely go 3 miles from your house and not bump into 5 urgent cares, brand new buildings that have been put up, huge quantities of money being put into buildings for people providing a service that is, if it's not effective for them, why are they doing it? If you look at the deductibles, you can pay all of your health insurance, and unless you get run over by a car, you're never going to be able to collect a single penny. What are you going to do about health care?
Well, first off, your observation that as people build new buildings, they're not doing it for a charity. You're right. I mean, they're obviously making money off of the system the way it's currently operating. This is one of the real tragedies of Obamacare, right? In politics, I think, your job is to always underpromise and overdeliver. And unfortunately, in Obamacare, it was the exact opposite, right? There were 3 central promises. If you like your doctor, you can keep him. If you like your health care plan, you can keep it. And prices are going to go down. You lost your doctor, you lost your health care plan, your prices went up. That's 0 for 3. Even a Mets fan like me knows 0 for 3 is bad. It's bad, right? So here's what I would do. The idea of the federal government running this system is complete folly. And let's use a common sense example. Let's take our 2 states. Now, New Hampshire and New Jersey, from a landmass perspective, are roughly the same size, roughly. Yet you have 1.3 million people here in New Hampshire. I have 8.9 million people in New Jersey, in roughly the same space. And so we're the most densely populated state in the country. We're the most urbanized state in the country. We're the most ethnically diverse state in the country. The challenges that we face in providing health care, access to health care, are much different than New Hampshire. New Hampshire, a lot of the access to health care issues are at distance. How far do you have to go to find, especially in the North Country, how far do you have to go to find a doctor or a hospital that can actually care for the ailment that you have? And cost. And deductibles are one of those things that drive that cost, the overall cost out of your pocket. The differences in New Jersey are that we don't have access problems because of distance. I mean, heck, I trip over a hospital every 4 miles in New Jersey. They're everywhere. In fact, we probably have too many. Our issue is purely a cost issue in New Jersey. So why would a plan that's going to address New Hampshire's problems and New Jersey's problems be one plan that the federal government devises? So this is what I would do. I would repeal Obamacare, but what I would do is give every state a year, mandatory, to come up with their own plan. And what are the issues in New Hampshire? If the issues of high deductibles are the biggest problem in New Hampshire, well, then the people in New Hampshire can tell their elected representatives, we can't live with high deductibles. So we want a lower deductible plan available to us, and we'll pay for it. But we need a lower deductible plan so that our out-of-pockets, if something gets really ugly, doesn't kill us. Let's say you're a family that thinks that having your child until 26 years old on your health plan is something that's very important to you, okay? Advocate with your state legislature for that. Advocate for pre-existing conditions to be covered. Argue for portability of insurance across employer to employer. Argue for buying insurance across state lines, which may not, like let's say in New Hampshire, they have all those requirements, right? And let's say that makes it much more expensive. Let's say you look at it and say, you know what, I don't need all that. But in Nebraska, they're offering a plan that gives me what I need. You should be able to go to Nebraska and buy that plan. Get online, buy it from a Nebraska insurance company. If that's important to you, buying across state lines, you advocate that with your state legislature. But you got a much better chance of getting a plan that fits New Hampshire's problems if you're talking to Sean Jasper and the Republicans in the House and the Senate than you are if you're trying to deal with the Department of Health and Human Services in Washington. You make a phone call to Jasper's office, you send an email, you send a letter, you're going to get a response really quickly. You send one to HHS, you get a form letter in 6 months. And you'll be like, that doesn't even answer my question. Government on health care needs to be more local. You can see trends here. So if we see that there's lots of urgent care facilities going up here in New Hampshire, the legislature can look at what kind of money they're making and if it's fair and what are the charges and what's the cost to the taxpayer, to the patient in this state. Much better than anybody in Washington, D.C. would even care about what the heck is going on at an urgent care facility in New Hampshire. So I'm an advocate for pushing this down to the state level. And by the way, there's also a philosophical reason for it. The 10th Amendment to the Constitution says if these powers are not enumerated, they revert to the states. I've read it from cover to cover. Healthcare is nowhere in the Constitution. Not there, right? So let's get back to basics. And I think if we do that, here's the last thing I'd say to you is that there's a saying, it's not my saying, someone else's, I don't know whose it is, but they said that democracy is not a system that doesn't make mistakes, but it is the best system for fixing mistakes once they're made. You keep your democracy down to the lowest local level, you got the biggest chance of impacting when a mistake is made, an omission is made of fixing it. Look at us trying to fix Obamacare now at the federal level. We got no hope. It's all tied up into politics, it's all thrashing around, and nothing good's happening. Here, you could sit down with listen, by the way, you got 400 state reps. I mean, I trip over hospitals in New Jersey, you guys trip over state reps. I mean, man, they're everywhere. God love them, they're everywhere. So you go to the deli, the dry cleaners, you go to the local basketball or football game, you wind up going to church or synagogue, and you're gonna run into a state rep somewhere. And you grab them, you can buttonhole them. You don't do that same thing with members of Congress. You don't do that same thing, certainly with the executive branch. So that's what I would do. It allows you to have local control here and decide what's important. And what's important to folks in New Hampshire may be different than what's important to folks in New Jersey or Wyoming or Texas. Let's celebrate the differences in our states, and let's let them use those differences to give you the best plan they can give you. That's the way I would do it. Local control is our DNA. That's exactly, well, live free or die, baby. Live free or die. All right. Yes, young lady back there.
First of all, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
I've seen a lot of other candidates, and I was just reading this morning that Madeleine Albright has said that young women, or that there is, quote, a special place in hell, that's a direct quote, for young women who don't vote for Hillary Clinton. There's not a power on earth that's going to get me to vote for Hillary Clinton. But I'm in my 20s. I'm not going to see Social Security. Healthcare is going to be a continuing issue for myself, my children, my parents, my grandparents. So taxes, the massive national debt, our safety and security, the changing face of this world that's very different than it was for my parents, my grandparents. Why should a young woman vote for you instead?
How would you like to be vice president?
I would very much like it, in fact.
I mean, right? That's a pretty articulate, smart woman. You're on the short list now, my dear. Thank you very much. Listen, why should you vote for me? Because you want someone to tell you the truth.
I absolutely
About
do.
every one of those problems, I've put out ideas about how to deal with them. Every one of them. And I've been willing to sit here at town hall meetings in New Hampshire over 71 days and do it for 2 hours. I don't do drive-by town hall meetings where you come in and 45 minutes, I give a speech for 20, I take 4 questions for 25 minutes, and I go, thank you very much, everybody, goodbye, and I walk out. We sit here and we take questions and we give detailed answers. That lady's concerned about Social Security. She needs to know exactly what I intend to do so that when she goes in and votes for me, thank God, when she goes in and votes for me tomorrow night and then I become president, she's not gonna look at me and go, wait a second. he said this, but he did that. He didn't really say, and I go, oh, well, I didn't really say exactly what I was going to do. I want to say exactly what I'm going to do. This is the first thing for you, no matter what age you are in this room. You want to go back to a political system where people actually tell you what they think, regardless of what the cost is. I may say something you don't like. Every time I say something specific, I run the enormous risk of getting you angry and having you go look at somebody else. I'm willing to take the risk because I'd rather have you know what you're buying than have buyer's regret. And so that's why some of these other candidates in the race and why Saturday night was so different. You know, you can't just sit there and give generalized answers about how much you love America. We all love America. If you're running for president, you love America. Right? We do. I'm going to say everybody loves America. Let's say that. We love the flag. We salute the flag. We all love our country. I would say that about every person who's on that stage on Saturday night. Not any of them, no matter what disagreements I have, aren't really great Americans that don't love their country. So why should you vote for me? One, because I'm going to tell you the truth and give you specifics. Two, because the plans that I put forward are forward-looking, not backward-looking. So, for instance, you're saying you're never going to see Social Security. You might be right. I'm not sure. My son feels the same way. You know, he started working and he's 22 and he sees the FICA taxes being taken. He said, what's FICA? I'm like, you'll learn, brother, you'll learn. You know, but my plan says we should stop looking through the rearview mirror and make changes that will allow us to invest in the future. So I have a plan that says we got to invest in our military, but we also have to invest in the National Institutes of Health and the National Science Foundation. Because if America wants to remain a cutting-edge country economically, and we want to come up with the cures and treatments we need to make quality of life better while we make length of life better, we need to invest in those things with the private sector. I'm a guy who said, listen, we got to lower our tax rates and we got to lower our regulation so that this guy isn't getting killed every time he turns around in his small business, so that maybe his small business becomes a bigger business and he can employ other people. You want a place where you want to be safe and secure. You're not going to get up and go to work in the morning if you're afraid of crime on the streets or terrorism coming to your community. And after there's been an attack at a Center for the Developmentally Disabled in San Bernardino, California, that means any place in America is now a target for terrorism. It's not just New York City or Chicago or Los Angeles or Boston. It's everywhere, right? So you're going to want a president who knows how to do it. I know how to do it. I've done it. No one's going to have to come in. The FBI director, when he comes in the first day, when I'm president, to brief me, he's not even going to have to introduce himself to me. I know him. We worked together. He was the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan when I was the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey. Jim Comey's not going to look at me and say, Mr. President, let me first explain to you what actionable intelligence is. Okay, let me go, Jim, let's move on. You know I know this. I know how to do these things because I've done them. And you watched me during Hurricane Sandy. And what I will tell you about that experience is it was one of the formative experiences of my life on how to deal with a crisis, but also how to put aside politics. There are folks in this race who criticize me on a regular basis in your mailboxes because I shook the President of the United States' hand and said thank you to him when he came to my state when we had been devastated and offered help. Well, listen, if that's the kind of politician you want, vote for them. The kind of politician I am is I put the people who elected me first, ahead of politics. Because if you don't do that, then you're violating the oath that you take on the day you take office. That's the kind of president I'll be. You also will never have to wonder what I'm thinking. You'll never have to wonder what I'm feeling. You will see it. It will be apparent to you. People have said lots of things about me. I'm sure you've read and heard many of them. Here's one thing they've never said that I'm misunderstood, right? You listen this morning, you know exactly where I stand on things, and then you make your call. But I don't think I should appeal to you. Let's get back to your beginning comment from Madeleine Albright. This is the inherent falsehood of the liberal philosophy. They believe that you should vote for Hillary Clinton. Not only you should vote for her, but that there's a special place in hell for you if you don't, right? I mean, I bet you that's the last time she's gonna be on the campaign trail for Hillary. I'm thinking it's time to, maybe let Madeleine, go back to studying, writing books or whatever. The fact is, they think that you should vote purely because of your gender. They think that I should make a special appeal to you that's different to you because you're a woman that I'm gonna make to Dan because he's a man. Sorry, I'm gonna make the very same appeal. You know why? Because I live every day for the last 30 years with a really strong woman who, if I started to speak to her like she's a woman, whatever that means, all I know is it would be a very cold night for me, right? Very cold night. We have two young daughters, 19, and 12, who I tell every day, every time I can, I try to remind them that your sense of self-worth, of who you are and what you can be, comes from within you. It doesn't come from anybody else, not from any man, and certainly not from some former Secretary of State who tells you you're going to burn in hell if you don't vote for somebody, right? So I think you should vote for me because I'm going to treat you like I treat him or her or him or him or her. I'm going to treat you any differently, and I'm not going to give you a different answer. Just because you're younger, I'm not going to say something different. If you ask me what music I like, I'm going to tell you the same kind, even though I know that maybe the music I like and the music you like. I'm not going to try to pander to that. And I think we've had a panderer in chief for the last 7 years, right? Who he tries to look into your eye and tell you exactly what you want to hear. And he's good at it. He figures it out a lot of times, right? I mean, he's not good at being president, but he's good at trying to figure out what you want to hear. Yeah. And my view is you got to be who you are. If you're who you are, you've got a chance to be successful. If you fake it, you know, you're always going to get caught. It may take a while if you're really good at it, but as we saw on Saturday night, when the lights are really bright and everybody's watching, you can't fake it any longer. If you're memorizing answers that people told you to memorize, and then all you do is repeat them over and over again, no matter what the other person says, you can't do that when Vladimir Putin's sitting across the table from you. Can you imagine if that scene happened with Vladimir Putin sitting across the table and you just keep saying the same thing over and over again, no matter what Vladimir Putin says?
No.
Right? Well, man, that's what's, guess what? Those are the stakes.
Absolutely.
Those are the stakes. This isn't a dress rehearsal. It isn't a TV show. No offense, buddy. It's not a TV show. You don't get to say, cut, take two.
You're right.
Well, he never does that because he's perfect. They call him old first take Valastro. But nonetheless, so that's why you should vote for someone who's real and genuine, who tells you the truth, not what you want to hear. It doesn't matter whether you're in your mid-20s or your mid-60s. The truth is the truth. And I'll give you the truth as I see it. And if you like it, vote for me. And if you don't, you got like 7, 8 other people to pick from. But don't vote for Hillary. And I'm glad to hear you're not going to. Because that would be a disaster. It would be a disaster. But if you did decide to vote for Hillary, I wouldn't tell you you were going to hell for not voting for me, unlike her supporters who would tell you you're going to hell not voting for her.
I want to tell you that I've seen a lot of other candidates. I was a political science major, so I look at you guys really carefully. Yep. And I was undecided when I got here. And I have 33 hours now, probably.
Yeah, just about.
And you have earned my vote,
Thank
truly.
you. All right. All right, I'm 2 for 2. I'm leaving, everybody. Goodbye. Thank you very much. This can only go downhill from here. Wait, is the man, was the boss just raising your hand? All right, listen, the guy who's hosting us, he gets a question. Yeah, he opened up his business, he gets a question. I thought I saw you raising your hand. Let's go.
Oh, we didn't have any time earlier.
Yep, go ahead, Jack.
Since World War II and through the rest of the 20th century, American manufacturing pulled the country out of every economic demise. We're too small right now. There's not enough of us. Though we don't have a product, we make things for other people that do, and my customers are either competing against imports or exporting. In both cases, a strong dollar sucks for my business, period. You got any take on that?
Well, I got a couple of takes on manufacturing, and we can talk about the strong dollar too. I mean, listen, the fact is that we've got to be careful about the way other countries, and we've got to start getting tougher with them about the way they handle their currencies, because everything's relative, right? So when you have the Chinese, degrading their currency, right, by definition, it makes ours stronger. No matter what the circumstances or conditions are in our country that might draw, that might push it one way or the other. You've got other people doing things artificial that affect us. We've got to get tougher on that with them, and we've got to talk to them directly, the Chinese in particular, since they're our #1 economic rival. We've got to talk to them about what they're doing. But we also need to do things to help manufacturing here and help folks to expand. The two major driving costs of manufacturing are labor costs and energy costs. There are other costs, obviously, that go along, healthcare and other things, but the major drivers for folks are that. We need to drive down your energy costs. That's especially true here in New Hampshire. I mean, you folks are paying much too high in energy costs in New Hampshire as compared to the rest of the country, let alone the rest of the world. So on the currency side of things, we need to audit the Fed. We need to look at exactly what they've been doing. You think about now, we're at 0.7% economic growth last quarter. What happens if we go into a recession and we've got interest rates at like 1/4 point? What are we going to do? What tools are in our toolbox? They've artificially kept rates low for years and years and years. And now if we get another problem, what tools do we have left in the toolbox to fix that? So monetary policy has to be looked at from a number of different perspectives, both what our Fed is doing inside this country on monetary policy and what other countries and their central banks are doing that affect the strength or weakness of the dollar that clearly affects your business and your customers' businesses. On the energy side, we need to partner with Mexico and Canada to make North America the energy continent, and we can do it. We have enough energy resources now that we've discovered and how to exploit them to do that. Imagine the power of what would happen here in North America if we build the Keystone Pipeline. Mexico is now denationalizing their energy business so that we can invest and draw more energy out of Mexico. Imagine what that would do to the cost of energy in this country and how it would affect the manufacturer. That if their energy prices are significantly lower than the Chinese, we can compete around the world from a cost perspective without affecting our labor, with our labor wages. We can bring that down because the Chinese will not be able to compete with us from an energy perspective if we team with Canada and Mexico to be able to do it. I just think that, for me, the idea that we're artificially keeping energy costs higher than they need to be because we're unwilling to work with Canada and Mexico on this, which the president has been unwilling to, Keystone being one of the key examples of that. We need to do that. 85% of that Keystone energy that was coming down was going to be consumed here in the United States. 100% of it was going to be refined here in the United States. And only 15% was going to be shipped offshore. What an enormous advantage to us to have two friendly neighbors, not Iraq, not Iran, not Saudi Arabia, but friendly neighbors who aren't looking. I don't think that the Canadians or the Mexicans are looking to conquer us anytime soon. Now they look fairly friendly up there. Yeah, you're afraid of the Canadians? Yeah, huh? Got a lady up here afraid of the Canadians. Yeah, I think they're good comedians. I mean, we got a lot of comedians from Canada. Fact is, that's what I think we need to do on the manufacturing front, Jack. And I would be happy to sit with you another time and get more ideas from somebody who's actually doing it, because somebody who's actually doing it knows a hell of a lot more than I do. But that's my sense of how we deal with the currency issue, which obviously affects your business, but then also how do we affect the cost basis of your business and make it more affordable for you to be able to compete from a price perspective with other folks, not only around the country, but around the world.
I think if there's a way to level the playing field on the value of the dollar, we can figure out the rest of it.
All right. Good. You took one off my plate, Jack. Thank you. All right. So staff's telling me I can take one more question because I'm doing 4 town hall meetings today, but since they said one, I'll take 2 because I want to show them I'm still the boss. You know? You laugh, but you know what it's like to run for president? You're surrounded every day by people who are significantly younger than you, and they tell you where to go and what to do every minute. It's the only place where I'm safe, everybody, from the tyranny of the young. This lady's had her hand up the entire time, and I promised I'd get to her.
Hello, thank you very much, Governor Christie. My question is today, I'm a parent, and I'm also a native Granite Stater, and I'm all about local control. But I look at what's happening in Flint, Michigan, and I say, that government left those people behind. Would I be absolutely terrified if I was in a situation where if I turned on my water, I didn't know if it was going to poison my kids. We've now created a public health emergency. What would you do if you were the president to help the people of Flint?
I'd intervene immediately. I'd call the governor and say, listen, you guys have had your chance. We need to come in and fix this problem. And you need to bring the resources of the federal government from 2 perspectives. One, for repairing the problem and getting them a reliable water supply as quickly as possible. And just going in there and bringing all the parties to the table and saying, this has to be fixed now. Can't wait. Second is, in the temporary short term, we got to make sure that they get reliable water in there to make sure that they're taken care of, being able to cook, being able to drink it, being able to bathe, all the things that they want to do so it doesn't affect the child. It is an enormous failure of government. And I'm sure we're going to have lots of postmortems afterwards as to whether it was just the local government that failed, the county government, the state government, or all 3, and who knew what when, and who didn't act aggressively enough, who put money before public health, all the rest of those things. You see it all kind of bubbling up a little bit in the stuff I'm reading, and all I know is what I'm reading in the paper like you and hearing on the news. I'm not getting any kind of special briefings on this, but the fact is, as a governor, I know the way this works. And at some point, when you're the governor and you find out about this, you've got to be real aggressive. I think Governor Snyder has been aggressive now, and he also asked for help. As president, I would make sure that I went to the governor first and said, hey man, you need help. I'm not waiting for you to ask. You need help. These people are Americans, these children are Americans, and I cannot have a major American city that doesn't have clean drinking water, safe drinking water. So, you know, listen, that's part of the thing of having been a prosecutor and a governor. I'm not going to be afraid to exert executive authority. In response to this gentleman's question, that's a public health emergency. Well, man, you're not waiting for permission when it's a public health emergency. The same way I'm not waiting for permission if there's a terrorist attack. The same way I'm not waiting for permission if there's an attack by a foreign entity. That's why we give the president the authority we give him, that you don't have to wait for Congress to do some of that stuff. If the health, safety, security of the American people are at risk, the president must bring to bear the executive branch's authority, power, and resources to fix it. If we're waiting for a bill to get passed for 3 weeks, people are dying. You can't have that. So that's the balance between the branches, right? You can't do that on something that's not an emergency. And that's what this guy has done. No one would object if the president did stuff in something that was an emergency. And Flint is an emergency. And, you know, same things happening, you know, or similar things happening in Sebring, Ohio. There are things that are happening out there that we got to be smart about. So as president, I would get on the phone with the governor immediately, and most likely I would know that governor, because I've been a governor for the last 6 years, and so they wouldn't be worried about me not understanding their prerogative or what position they're in. I'd say to them, I've been there. I'm here to help, because we, as elected officials, have to be concerned about him, just the way you are. We've got to be as concerned about him, or at least as close as concerned. You'll never be quite as concerned about him as you are, right? We all love our children more than anyone else could ever love them, but we've got to be sure we treat them in a way that it appears to everybody that they're our children too, because they are when it comes to their public health safety. So that's the way I would do it. I would be very aggressive about it. I would not be asking for an invitation. I'd come in and go fix it, because that's a dreadful, ugly problem, and it's scary, because the long-term health effects are something that we don't know exactly what this is going to mean for those children, but we know it can't be anything good. Everything, sure, and there's going to be long-term costs associated with that, right? If children are affected, their brain function is affected, and they still need to be educated, there's going to be additional costs that are going to go along with trying to bring them along and make sure they catch up if that's possible. So there's going to be all kinds of costs that go along with this over the long term. We got to get smart about it, try to prevent these things before they happen. But once they do, short-circuit it as quickly as possible so we're not adding to the problem every day. So that's what we should be doing. Got a good mom. Good for you. All right, I can take one more. Let's go right here.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor Christie. I am a Gold Star mom and a Blue Star mom. Lost my son in Iraq in 2006, and my daughter has been serving in the Navy since then. I also have a son who graduated from college. He has moved out 3 times, and he's had to move back home 3 times because he lost a job, lost his benefits, and can't make enough money to pay for rent, pay for his car, and pay off his school loans. Do you have a plan for these thousands that are drowning in college debt?
Yeah, I do. I do. First of all, we are indebted to you. I see your button on, and we're indebted to you because there's no greater sacrifice that a parent can make than to offer their child for the service of our country, and no greater tragedy than to lose them. So everybody here, I know, I speak for everybody here when we say we thank you for your sacrifice, and we pray for you and for your family, and we pray for the safety of your daughter in the Navy.
Appreciate that.
Now let's talk about your son who's moving back in, and we want to get him the hell out of the house, don't we?
I'd like to once and for all.
We want to get him out, don't we? I mean, let's be honest about it. We got to get him out. So here's what I would do about his debt issue. I have 4 ideas on how to deal with the student debt issue. And let me tell you that Mary Pat and I deal with this from the perspective of parents who have 2 children in college right now. So our son is a senior at Princeton, and our daughter is a sophomore at Notre Dame, which means our college bills this year are $122,500. So we feel your pain, right? As a famous politician once said. We got to do 2 things on the debt side and 2 things on the cost side. Now, the cost side won't help your son now since he's already through it, but you need to know what I want to do about that too, so it doesn't affect other young people in the future. On the debt side, first off, he should be able to refinance his loans. He's paying artificially high rates that the government gave him, and the rules say you can't refinance them. That's crazy. He should be able to go to a local bank and refinance those loans, pay off his principal, and be able to save 3, 4, 5, 6 points on his rate over what he's paying for the government. We're making money off your son, and it's disgraceful. We wanted to help educate him. We should make a reasonable rate, a market rate, not above market rate. That's what the government's doing now. I would end that. I'd let him refinance his loans wherever he could refinance them, with a bank or any other financial institution. And if he can get a lower rate, God bless him, let him do it. And it brings down the cost of him both in the short term, the monthly payment, and the long-term cost over paying the whole thing back. Second, this might be something that gets him out of the house. I want to give a national service option to him. Beyond what is happening in the military right now, I want to give a national service option for folks with student debt. Let them go any place in the country, contribute to our society. There's lots of things we need done. Let's pay them a bit, and let's also knock down their loans every year that they're willing to engage in national service. It will make our country a better place. It will make him a better person for having had the experience. And then when he's done with his national service, he's going to have less debt, if any debt, depending on how long he does it. And then when he decides to go out there and choose what job to take after that, he can follow his heart, not worry about how much do I have to make a month to cover this nut of my payment for my student loan payment. So that's why I deal with the two things on his side of it, on the payment side. I would remind you that, like Bernie Sanders says, he's going to make everybody's college tuition free. We must remember that there's nothing free in this world. And I demonstrated this. A young person asked me, talk about the difference between how young people view things. This guy asked me at a town hall meeting a couple of nights ago, why not have Bernie Sanders' plan, which is going to give me college for free? So I called one of my friends over, actually my campaign lawyer, who's the only one I trusted to actually do this. And I said, would you please go in my pocket here and pull what is in there out? And he said, okay. So he pulled out my money. And I said, okay, now go give it to that kid. So he gave the kid my money. And I said, that's what free tuition is. You took my money, Bernie took my money and gave it to you. There's nothing free. Bernie didn't invent it out of nowhere. He took my money. By the way, he'll take a lot of Buddy's money, because Buddy's got a lot more money than I do. So he goes into Buddy's pocket, it's going to really be an adventure. But the bottom line is that everybody needs to understand there's nothing for free. But I think that's the two ways you deal with the debt side of things. Lower your carrying costs by just virtue of letting him get a market rate loan rather than a higher than market rate loan. And second, give him a national service option. Wants to do that for a few years. He's getting paid not only what he needs to live, but he's getting debt relief. Well, I'm not talking about the military. This is national service beyond the military. Because that option is always available to him. It's available to him now if he qualified. But there's lots of national service we can do in this country that has nothing to do with being in the military. Lots of work that we need to have done. Do you know how many people in national service came into New Jersey after Sandy? AmeriCorps kids who were volunteering, who were part of national service. We had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids who rotated in to help us do things like tear people's drywall off their walls, pull up their soaking wet, smelly carpeting, help them get their house back in a place where they could, rebuild it. There's lots of things that folks can do, and I became a total advocate of this when I saw AmeriCorps come into New Jersey after Sandy. These people did wonderful things, and these young people also lifted people's spirits. They have an enthusiasm and an optimism that, especially after you've been through a hurricane and you're older, you get beaten down pretty quick. And they came in with smiles, and they felt like they could change the world, and they did. They did change the world. There's something really wonderful about that. And that's why I want national service for folks like your son as an option. You don't have to take it if he doesn't want to. It's not going to be mandatory. We're not going to draft him into national service. We're going to say this is an option, and you can get debt relief and a little bit of money to continue to support yourself during that period of time. That's a pretty good deal, I think. On the cost side, let's remember this. The debt problem is a direct result of the cost. The debt didn't just get there out of nowhere. So, for instance, our daughter is a sophomore at Notre Dame. This summer, we got a letter from Notre Dame, that letter over the summer that you get, Dear Parents. Dear Parents, it went something like this. It was from Father John Jenkins, the president of Notre Dame. First paragraph, something like this said, Dear Parents, we want to thank you for the blessing you've bestowed upon us by entrusting the souls of your children to our care and our education for the next number of years, right? You get done with that first paragraph from a priest, right? You close your eyes, you can hear the theme from Rudy playing in the background, right? You can see the Golden Dome and Touchdown Jesus. It's an extraordinary thing. How many people in here, raise your hands if you don't mind, are Catholic? Got Catholics in here? Okay, so for the Catholics, after that paragraph, what's the next paragraph? Money. Exactly. This is a priest. They know how to separate you from your money better than anybody. So they get the heart pounding, and then they move in for the kill. So he says, that's why I'm so pleased to tell you that tuition this year will only increase 3.9%. In a 1% inflation world, only 3.9%. Here's the kicker. He said, which is the lowest increase at Notre Dame in 40 years. A nearly 4% increase is the lowest increase in 40 years. So now what if we made this decision like we make every other decision in life about how to spend money? We decide, is what's offered at the price it's offered at a value for us? If we think it is, we'll pay it. If we don't, we won't. Do we do that with college? How about this? How about if I wanted to make the decision that way and I decided Notre Dame's tuition this year is $62,500. Let's say I decided at $62,500, not a value for me. Imagine us calling our daughter downstairs. For any of you who currently have or have had 19-year-old daughters, how do you think that conversation would go exactly? Sarah, we don't think at $62,500 is any longer a value, so we're going to send you to a different school that's cheaper, and don't worry, you'll love it just fine. I think, at least in my house, after the crying, stamping of the feet, running upstairs, slamming her door shut, and somewhere in that sequence yelling, "You're ruining my life and I hate you." All right? You know what's going to happen. You do the same thing that Mary Pat and I would do. You sit at the table and you try to figure out, how can I make this happen? Here's the problem. Notre Dame knows that too. They know. They know there's no market forces on what they charge. They know, because we don't make a decision based upon intellect in those areas. It's emotion. Our kids love the school. And you know, I look at parents who are sitting around a lot of my town hall meetings. A lot of them have college sweatshirts on. And I'm like, did you go there? Oh no, my kids go there. Right? We make an emotional connection with those places too. And so they know that and they exploit it. So we need to put market forces on in two ways. First, we need to have them detail for us what they're spending our money on. Is it the most nondescript bill in the world, the college bill? I just paid Princeton's bill, right? It's 3 lines. It says tuition, room and board, other fees. $29,750. If you went out for breakfast in Hudson this morning and the waitress put on your table after your breakfast and you flipped over the check and it said food, $20. You'd be like, hey, sweetheart, come over here for a second, would you? Could you detail for me exactly what I got and how much each of it costs so I know? Yet college, do we ask that? 3 lines. 3 lines we put up with. I would require them to tell us exactly what we're paying for, because you know what? If they had to do that, they'd be embarrassed and we'd be outraged, because you know they're wasting money in these places. You know they are. You and I both know it. But we can't put the finger on them because they don't tell us. Now they need to tell us. The second thing I would do is allow you and your son to unbundle your bill. Pick the things you want to use and pay for them. You know, you're not going to use a whole bunch of this stuff, don't pay for it. You should only pay for what you're going to use. The fact is, then that's a market force on it, right? So if 98% of the people said, you know, if they had on their, the athletic center, and your son said, listen, you know, I'm not going to go and work out there. I'm not going to do that stuff. I'm here to study. I'm not going to do that. Don't check it off. If 98% of the people didn't check off the athletic center, they weren't going to build a new athletic center. They're not going to do it. Or if they're going to do it, they're going to do it just for their athletes, and they're going to pay out of that money that they make from football or basketball or anything else. We need to allow people to unbundle their bills, to get some freedom, and to put market forces on it. That's like a direct survey back to the institution about what people value and what they're willing to pay for. One step at a time, my friend. One step at a time. You know, the fact is that we need to do that because we're getting ripped off. We are. And it's not, you know, not every institution is awful. And most of these places give our kids a really good education. But, you know, I had a college president the other night say to me, well, I don't charge nearly what it costs me to do this. She missed the entire point. The point is, why does it cost that much? Don't tell me what kind of break you're giving me. Stop spending all that money in the first place. So those are the 4 things I would do. The last 2 things you could rightfully say to me, and this lady's about to right over here because she knows how to ask me questions. You say, how? How are you going to do that? How are you going to make them do it? Here's the way I'm going to make them do it. They have to do it. If they don't, they cannot participate in the federal student loan program or the federal student grant program. Right? That's the way we do it. You want, and this goes to that guy's point, you want to use our taxpayer money, then you got to play by a different set of rules that gives us transparency into how you're spending our taxpayer money. That would make him feel not great, but a little bit better. It's a little. We're just going for a little bit at a time here. A little bit better. So that's what I would do for your son on the cost side and on the loan side. And I think that's a good place to start to try to control these things. And good luck to your daughter and your son. We'll be thinking about both of them. Thank you for coming this morning and listening. I appreciate it. All right. So I am all over New Hampshire today. I'm doing this 3 other times today and a couple of other events as well. We're going to be busy. We're going to be working. And we're going to be trying to convert people like we just converted some of the people here who said out loud they were converted. And I suspect there are many of you who are silently converted. You can keep it to yourself if you want, as long as you go in that voting booth tomorrow and do the right thing. She has a comment. All right, this is, by the way, I want to let you know, this is when I get in trouble with my wife, because I do this all the time, and then we get in the car and she goes, "What are you doing? We have a schedule."
I've come to see you 5 times, and I brought my daughter last night. I don't know if you remember at Cactus Jack's. So I think you're fantastic. I'm voting for you. I've told everyone I know that they need to come to my side. To your comment about Madeleine Albright, for God's sake, my response is there is a special place in hell for women who vote for women just because they are women. It's embarrassing. As a woman, I think you have all of the right positions on the things that matter to me, and I think the things that should matter to everybody else, like national security, the military, the economy. Those are my hot button issues. I wish they were everybody's hot button issues. I know they're not, but I'm trying my best to convince everyone. So women should not vote for women because they are women. We should vote for the best qualified candidate, and that's you.
Thank you. I got a feeling I'm not going to get in trouble for that one, am I? Not bad. Every once in a while I picked wrong, though, and I give it the mic to the last person. They're like, "Let me tell you what I think of you," and she's looking at me like, "Good move, buddy, good move. Very well done." I want to say 2 things here before we go. First, to Jack and everybody else who's here, thank you for letting me be here, and thank you for coming and listening. I appreciate it very much. I tell people all the time, if you get cynical about our democracy, come to New Hampshire. Come to New Hampshire. Because you folks have been listening to us for the better part of a year now. Coming to town hall meetings, 5 times to tell you going to so many different candidates. By the way, no need to go to any more now. Listen, go home, relax, stay safe. Maybe go out to lunch with her. Maybe the 2 of you could go out to lunch, talk to each other, reinforce the positive vibe. That's the kind of thing we want to be doing. But I tell people all the time that they should come to New Hampshire because you folks are among really the most loyal people to our democracy. Because the way you display that loyalty is to show up. Easy to sit on your couch and complain. Easy to do it, and lots of people do. But the people who actually get out here and listen and question us and test us, those are the people who deserve to be rewarded in this democracy. And you're going to be rewarded by having a very large voice in our country's future tomorrow night. Second thing I just want to tell you all is this. I haven't been subtle about it already with some of my interactions with you, but I am asking for your vote. Let there be no doubt that I want your vote. I want your support. And sometimes people in politics forget. I plead guilty to that because earlier in New Hampshire, back last August, I gave a town hall meeting, and a gentleman came up to me afterwards, and he said to me, "Governor, I love everything you said. I agree with your positions. I think you'd be a great leader for our country, and I'm not voting for you." I'm like, "You're not voting for me? What do you mean you're not voting for me?" He goes, "Well, you forgot to do something, and since you forgot to do it," he said, "I can't vote for you, but I wish you all the best of luck." It looked like he's in his mid-80s, and he just started walking away from me. I said, "No, wait, come back here." I said, "Come on, tell me what I forgot to do. That's fair." He said, "All right." He goes, "You didn't ask for my vote." He said, "I sat here for 2 hours. I listened to all your positions. I love them. I like you." He said, "I want to vote for you, but you don't ask for my vote. You're not getting my vote. So you're not getting my vote. I'm sorry." And I looked at him, I said, "Well, can I have your vote?" He said, "Too late." I said, "Too late? It's August, man. You're not voting till February. How can this be too late?" And he goes, all right, this is what I'll do." He said, "I'm going to come back to one of your town hall meetings later." He said, "Now I'm going to sit in a place where you can't see me." He said, "And I'm going to see if you remember what I told you. And if you do, and you ask for the vote," he said, "then I will reconsider my position. But if you don't, I won't." And I said, "All right, sir, thank you. I appreciate it. We shook hands. And he walked away. He took like 4 or 5 steps away, and then he stopped. He turned back and looked over his shoulder at me, and he said, and by the way, that's the way we do things in New Hampshire, son. So I live in mortal fear of this guy, right? That he's showing up somewhere, and not only will he not vote for me, but he'll talk to all of you and say, by the way. So I don't want to leave any doubt in New Hampshire residents' minds that I'm asking for your vote. And it's really important. You know, this lady has a daughter in the Navy. She needs to have the type of commander-in-chief who she can go to bed at night and know that that commander-in-chief is going to give her daughter all the tools that she needs to defend our country and defend herself, and that the commander-in-chief will be thinking every day about what he owes to her daughter and the others just like her, and to try to get her home safe and whole. Most important thing. And so I want you to know I'm ready for that job. I've been tested over the last 13 years, being a federal prosecutor, being the governor of what I lovingly call an unruly state to govern. It's prepared me. It's gotten me ready. You will never see me ever hesitate to make a decision. You are hiring me to decide. And I will decide. And some days you'll like it and some days you might not. But remember something, if you're looking for the candidate, for those of you who are still shopping, if you're looking for the candidate you agree with 100% of the time, I got a suggestion for you. Go home, look in the mirror. You're it. You're the only person you agree with 100% of the time. That's it. Those of us who are married know that's really true, right? So if that's the case, then if you're demanding that someone agree with you 100% of the time to get your vote, you know what you're going to get? A liar. You're going to get somebody who's going to tell you whatever it is you want to hear, and they're going to get in office and do something different, and you're going to get angry and cynical and hate our democracy, and that's not where we want to be. I'm going to tell you what I think. I'm going to tell you what I feel. I'm going to tell you what I believe. And then you make the call from there. See, because I'm not doing this just to get another title. I got plenty of titles. I've been governor and U.S. attorney. I'm father, brother, son, husband. I got more titles than I know what to do with. I don't need another one. What I want to do is change our country. And I believe I can. And if you give me the chance, I think I can make our country safer and more secure. I think I can make it more prosperous and happier. Because remember this, and I'll leave you with this. The reason that this is the most amazing country in the world started right in the Declaration of Independence. When those men signed that document that Thomas Jefferson wrote that set out the 3 founding principles of our nation, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's the last one, is the one that grabs me. So many other countries have been founded on respect for life and desire for liberty. Lots of other countries have. No other country in this world has ever been founded on the idea that you have an individual, inalienable right to pursue happiness as you see it. That you get to pursue your life to try to make yourself and your family the happiest people they can be. What an extraordinary idea. Extraordinary idea. And that's why for over 200 years people have wanted to come to this country. Wanted to come to this country and make it their home. Because they look at us and they know, look at those people. Yeah, they work hard. Yes, they're tough. But they are in the main of people who every day believe that tomorrow can be happier for them than yesterday was. Because our Declaration of Independence tells us that's not only an opportunity, it is an inalienable right of being an American. I want to restore this country once again to a place where everyone believes when they get up in the morning they got a chance to pursue happiness for themselves, for their families, and for those that they love. And so I want to be your president because I want to make that happen with you. Not for you, with you. Because my presidency won't be my presidency, it'll be our presidency. Because you all will have helped to make it happen. Can't do it without you. Can't get there without you. And can't stay there and be successful there without you. So when you go to the polls tomorrow night, don't worry about anything other than going to that voting booth and voting with your heart and your head the person you think gives our party the best opportunity to beat Hillary Clinton and our country the best opportunity to pursue happiness again. We do that, we're going to be just fine. Thank you all very much.